it's exciting to work with somebody that you care about and you're excited about each other's ideas and you trust each other. I'll find an amazing record and it'll change the mood on how to make things for weeks. It used to be like an obsessive thing. And I pulled back and I was like, I'm going a little bit autopilot. I could practice this all day and I'm not necessarily going to have an easier time paying my bills. It's not about money.
Yo, what's up? This is Toru, music producer, entrepreneur, and host of this show, Producer Head. Very stoked to let you know that today's conversation is with Swarvy, the multi-instrumentalist, producer, mix engineer, mastering engineer, so on and so on. This conversation, we get into being a fan, deep appreciation of music, loving what you do, burnout, gives us a really cool deep dive on mixing, and I don't know, I just really enjoyed this conversation. Swarvy is somebody who is incredibly committed to the work that he does and also has a lot of fun doing it. And so there's like this professionalism and seriousness, but also a levity and like a humor that he brings to this that I think is just really refreshing and fun to talk with him. So thanks again to Swarvy for coming on the show. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Swarvy. So, man, I mean, one of the things that we talked about last time we caught up was, you just do so many different things in music and participate in a lot of different ways. So how do you describe to people what it is that you do?
I'm kind of just like an audio nerd, you know? I just like things that have to do with audio, like anything. It doesn't even have to be music. I like the sounds of things, so and sound design. So whatever I can get like sink my claws into that has to do with that is usually pretty fun. But so the main thing I've been doing a lot lately is mixing records. I really enjoy mixing records. Yeah, it's like consistently fun, whereas producing sometimes can be you can have all different types of feelings about it. Mixing's like really consistently easy way for me to interact with sound without having too much involved with it because it's
Interesting.
not always my
So
music,
what
you
made
know.
you decide to pursue, I mean, because I just feel like we kind of live in this time where it's a lot of, maybe pressure's the wrong word, but there's a lot of like kind of indicators that like specialization is kind of the key in order to advance in things. And so what made you kind of decide, like, what's the argument for doing a lot of different things?
Oh, it's funny because as I got older, I realized I never got a proper diagnosis, but I'm pretty sure I have ADD. So it's like actually, but even if that aside, I just tend to get bored doing the same thing over and over again. Sometimes I like the variety of being able to switch it up. I don't necessarily recommend trying to do everything. I think I just kind of arrived here. I don't think it's like it's hard to figure out how to do all that stuff. It's just different things I picked up over the years just from my own different interests and obsessions.
And I guess like now that you look back on this stuff and now you're doing all these things and right now you're sounds like you're focused on mixing a lot, enjoying mixing a lot. When you look back, like what has kind of been the progression? Like because I'm assuming, and stop me if I'm wrong, but that the like the place you're in right now maybe seems like kind of obvious and self-evident, but maybe isn't where you thought you would be when you first started.
No, yeah, that's true. I didn't really know um exactly all the different things that I would like doing. It's not like I like doing everything that has to do with music. Some of the things that have to do with music are like completely boring to me, like doing business stuff with music. I just cannot like it's just not hard for me to like motivate myself to get focused on stuff like that. Um Live sound, I don't think I would really enjoy doing. So, like, it's just over the years, I just tried different things. I just kept trying different things. When I was in school, I was like, shit, what can I do? I guess maybe I play music all the time. Maybe I can teach. So I tried teaching for a while, which I don't mind doing, but I don't think that's the main thing I really want to do. It's just kind of trial and error, honestly,
And then
to
when you look
arrive
back, are there like
where
certain
I'm at now.
phases that you kind of see that you went through?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I had a whole phase that was like I thought I was gonna be like the bass player guy back in the day. Like that was my thing. I was my main instrument was bass. I played the fuck out of my bass every day. And that's what I was doing. And then I was like, oh wait, guitar is really dope. Let me play that. Maybe I like doing that. Um, got really, really into drums for like however many years. You know what I mean? Spending like at least a few years on each thing, just being like, wow, this is crazy. Like, what can I do with this? And then also spending a really, really, really long time not doing any of that stuff anymore and just making beats and learning how to do that, which naturally led me to an interest in, I guess, sound
Yeah, I mean,
design,
so you've touched
mixing
on
type
so many
stuff,
things, right? Because there's like
So,
this technical aspect in mixing. There's all of the kind of instrumental, kind of like conventional, like musical things, pursuing instruments. Are there parts of that that felt? I mean, it sounds like underneath a lot of this, it's like just pursuing interest and what felt good at the time. I'm wondering if there are parts of this that feel more. What parts come most naturally to you when it comes to music, and what parts require kind of the most like kind of work or conscious like adaptation?
that's a good question. I think the um, things that end up being fun. What ends up being fun to me, I realized over the years, is like genuine, um, like when I'm by myself, like a genuine enthusiasm for what I'm in. It's like I'm in a playground. And the other thing that's really important to me when I'm working with other people is like a genuine connection. It's exciting to work with somebody that you care about and you're excited about each other's ideas and you trust each other. That pushes things forward. And so, yeah, really just sort of a connection either with what I'm doing and or the person I'm working with or multiple people I'm working with. Like believing in it
Yeah.
is really what
So
motivates me.
you said something really interesting to me last time we talked, and I feel like it's kind of related to like this obsessive, like producer grind kind of culture that we have. And I want to ask you, what do people tend to overlook, in your opinion, when they praise from the outside what looks like excessive levels of productivity from producers like Knowledge or Dilla?
Mm. Um, I think the main thing is like the two producers you just mentioned, especially just love music. You know, you're carried by just a genuine appreciation and love for music and all different. You can hear that in JD's music. You can hear it's like when you hear Charlie Parker playing saxophone, it sounds like he's smiling the whole time. You know what I mean? It's like a special thing that transcends what they're playing. You can feel that. That's most likely what was driving the productivity. Just a huge like passion and love for music. I really feel that in his music a lot. And yeah, hopefully the obsession is you're taking care of yourself too and not getting way too obsessed in only making, because I feel like that's really easy to do as well when you're really, really like hyper focused on something. But yeah, it's
See, I
it's,
think
it's a
what I
mindful.
really I want to press on this a little bit more because I think that's what's really interesting, right? Is that like I think because of this like productivity kind of culture and this producer grind kind of mentality, people just think about the output. And I think what's really interesting about what you're mentioning is that really that high level of output is just a natural consequence of like an underlying love and deep dedication to it. And so I guess how have you struggled with or how have you found it helpful to kind of strengthen that underlying connection for yourself?
Yeah, to take for me, I like to remain a fan. My favorite experiences with music is as a fan, listening and having these crazy an amazing show, being really moved, like being moved to tears by a show, by a performance, something like that, or a record. Those are my favorite moments. I try to always um stay centered with that. So if I'm not really feeling super inspired, you don't always have to have something to say. Maybe I need to just chill. Maybe I need to just live my life a little bit. Maybe I need to find some new music. There's so many records out there. And so it's kind of like that thing where you don't really have an excuse to be bored. It's like there's so many things you can do to keep yourself grounded. And I'll find an amazing record and it'll change my whole mood on how to make things for, weeks, sometimes longer.
I mean, how do you think about that relationship between talent, hard work, and creating good music?
To do it healthily with real discipline, it takes a lot of actual, actual self control, a lot of determination. There's days you're not going to want to practice important day that you should practice, or days that you don't want to make something, and that's a hard balance to get in terms of, you know, you're trying to play all the instruments so that you're not rusty. You're trying to make things all the time so that your creative muscle isn't rusty. You want to come at it where you're not trying to pressure or force too many. You just want to be able to like I feel like it actually probably takes a good amount of grounding and like mental control, like centering of yourself. Consistently do that. It's easy to you can get obsessed on something and just do it, and then you'll get through it and you'll get all this stuff done, but you'll be burnt out by it. So being able to have a balance where you can
Yeah.
still live your life and still go at these things at the pace that you want
I
is,
mean, I feel like
it's tough.
kind of you're
It's
describing
not easy.
discipline in a sense. So, I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
yes, I mean, personally, and I'm sure other people listening like can relate because I feel that like I'm trying to work on chops on a consistent basis, in my own way on different instruments. And that can at times like it's such an important foundational piece. And at the same time, it can feel at odds with like to your point, like, well, I'm just practicing. So I'm not necessarily making anything that anybody's gonna hear, or I'm not necessarily finishing anything that anybody's gonna hear. I'm wondering if like have you come up with ways that have helped you keep that in balance in a way? Is it something that you don't even think about consciously and you're just like, this is what feels good today and what's interesting today, so I'm just gonna do this? Is it none of those things?
Most of More often than not, it's usually just whatever I feel like. I'm trying sometimes to like plan certain things out, and I'll be like, I'm gonna do this these days. I'm gonna only work to this hour, and then I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna cut myself off. It's really hard. Um, once I get into something, there's no telling how long it'll take before I'm ready. If I feel like mixing that day, I might mix for however many hours, take a break, listen to it again, and then be like, oh, okay, I do it until I don't hear anything. And then I send it, and then they send me notes, and then I work on whatever their notes are. But I have to take care of like my own notes. So it's kind of a thing I do. I have to like cut myself off and be like, okay, that's enough. Like I did too much. I did enough. It's hard figuring out my own limits and stuff. And I've also over the years my perspective on practice has kind of shifted. It used to be like an obsessive thing. Then I pulled back and I was like, I'm going a little bit autopilot crazy mode. Let me just try to have a little bit more purpose in what I'm doing. And as I was working, I started realizing, man, like I could practice this bass all day. I started thinking that, which is not the best way to think. I was like, I could practice this all day and I'm not necessarily going to have an easier time paying my bills than if I made a drum pack or if I made this or this. So then I start like comparing the things that I'm doing to each other, and I was losing some value there. In practice isn't really about that. It's not about that at all. It's just about, it's like I said, about like it's like being in a relationship with yourself or with somebody else, and you want to like keep that relationship healthy. You don't just ignore everything. You know what I mean? You put work into it, and you try to practice like mindfulness and things like that with how you're doing everything. So yeah, getting back to just playing again and just playing again just to play, just so I can. This is for me. You know what I mean? Practice is for me. It's not about money. And those are the types of things that can get mixed up sometimes when you just like keep doing all these different things. One of the hardest things about doing music on your own, like that's your thing, is just like all the internal mental battles. I always tell musicians and engineers, even too, it's like a lot of this creative sometimes it's just your own mental battles. Like convincing yourself to put something out. Like I know so many people that have such amazing music, they refuse to share it with them,
Yeah. So I mean,
stuff like that.
how like I guess what do you have an example of something like that that you experienced that's like recent or that's like been consistent since you started and maybe like kind of some kind of trajectory and how you've kind of learned to navigate that a little bit more cleanly for yourself?
um, of what? Just
Sort of those mental pieces and like those
navigate
balances,
what
right? I think
cleanly.
one example being like this practicing. Yeah. Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Right, right, right. Um, One of the first really big things I had to conquer when I started really, especially when I quit my other jobs and I became full time. I'm just going to do this self-employed music thing. Uh, the guilt that I would feel from not being productive. It's really, really strong. And I've talked to other people, and I guess that's a very common occurrence. So other musicians spoken to have had similar experiences. You start to feel bad that you waste a day. I didn't make something today, like or whatever. And Yeah, I think to get through that, just started trying to practice being less, trying to not be so hard on myself. It's a big thing. Even though part of being hard on myself is what made me so productive, going overboard with it can just add, shame or whatever to to the whole vibe of how you're going about your day that isn't necessarily a productive. You can like beat yourself up so much. I would like, I used to be like so not present in my life because I was thinking of music.
Yeah.
So
So
I
I mean,
was just
because
not
in a
there.
sense, man,
You
I
know what I
feel
mean?
like because I remember a long time ago hearing like you had a reputation for like these kind of marathon kind of studio sessions. and being really deep and working on stuff. Can you talk about like what that time was like and maybe like where that reputation came from? And then like maybe the way that you look back on that now?
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to get work. I was in LA and trying to make everything work. I didn't have enough job. I was teaching for a little bit and then I quit that. I think I was at the time I was like, oh, I think I'm getting enough gigs I can play and do these things and I was getting enough sessions. There was a point in time where I feel like I was maybe a little too accessible where I felt like maybe I was a lot of people wanted sessions and at the same time and it was getting to be like overwhelming for me sometimes. But yeah, when I commit to a project, I had to learn how to start saying like no to certain what I actually when I do choose a project and commit to 'em, I go pretty hard. So yeah, like I had sessions. The one that comes to mind is when I was doing Rare Pleasure with Ringo. We were mixing his album and I was mixing, we were doing like, it was a lot of tracks to get through. And I wanted to do it. It's not like anybody was forcing me to work this long, but I worked for like we would do like 12-hour sessions, sometimes more. Like it'd be into like past midnight. It'd be like 3, 4 in the morning. I'm like finishing up the mix, and we had been working for like 14 hours or whatever. Like we took little breaks here and there, but not a lot of breaks. It wasn't super long. It was working for most of that time. Really just mixing the hell out of that record. But I look back at that time. I like that. I like being that focused on something. I probably now would maybe pace myself a little better. Maybe I'd go like 8 hours and be like, okay, let's chill. Let me give my ears a break. We'll come back. We'll like mess with this. You know what I mean? But that was a. I look back on the times when I actually went that hard, pretty fondly because it's
Mm.
just like nice.
Right.
It's
I
like
mean,
a
it
it's like
sounds
a
like
flow
that
state. You know
14
what I mean?
hours didn't
It's nice.
necessarily feel like 14
Feels
hours
good.
at the time, probably. Yeah.
No, it's really
But I mean,
easy to lose
also, like to
track
your
of time
point,
once
like
you
you
do that
mentioned
stuff.
even quickly in there,
Yeah.
like giving your ears a rest, right? And like, I mean, it's a hard thing to say, but like to let people know what's required really to reach a level where you can work that long and still trust your ears and your judgment. Because I don't think I would trust myself to work that long and also trust my mix decisions 14 hours deep, you know?
Yeah, that's very smart. Uh I don't know. My threshold was insanely high. All I was doing every day for I don't know, over a decade, literally every day was literally thinking about how to do things with music and then doing things with music. And so all day I was like really straining the hell out of my ears and my threshold for being able to hear something over and over and over and over and over again is like so much higher than those thresholds. Like I'll be working with artists and they're sick of their own song before I am. And I'm in there, and they made it so they have like a little more time with it, but they can't make decisions anymore and I'm just like, nah, I think we should go like this. I'm like still thinking through it. I can go like pretty long and I'll admit to myself when it gets too far, but I can go pretty far, like
Yeah,
farther than most
it's a
people I
really
work with.
well, I mean, talking about like a decade straight where you are doing it. So I unexpected, but I do kind of want to press on this too because I think it's really interesting to think about the way in which you educated yourself and developed the skills. So thinking about like because like I think a really common path today, right, is people have a problem, they Google it, they look on YouTube, they watch a video kind of that's like surgical as closely related to the specific problem that they're having and then go back. And I'm wondering how would you describe like kind of your path? Was it reading? Was it YouTube? Was it all those things? Was it just like making songs over and over again, making beats over and over again and creating your own problems and solving them? Was it none of those things? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I'm curious about.
When I started making shit, I still don't really use YouTube tutorials unless it's something I know nothing about. Like I just installed a new like head unit radio on my car and I didn't know how to route the cables all the way to the back camera and everything. And so me and my pops figured it out. And we watched some YouTube videos to figure it out because there's no instructions on this shit. So I feel like YouTube's a really powerful tool for things you know nothing about. Like it's a good place to just get started. Um, but when I was making shit, I never saw any. There was no tutorials for making beats. That wasn't a thing. I tried to read in interviews as much as I could from producers I respected and stuff to try to like learn things, and they would just never drop the things that I wanted to know. And so I was just always so confused. I'm like, man, you're talking about all this stuff. It's kind of like in those music documentaries where they talk about a band or whatever, and they just skip past so much shit. They skip past how anybody learned anything. They skip past how this band got famous, and they just like cut to it. That's what it would feel like reading some of these things. I'd be like, damn, they're just like they make these amazing things, and they're sort of talking about their process, and maybe they drop like a machine that they used. Like I remember back in like the 2000s, everybody there was one interview or something where Madlib said he used like a 303 on Mad Villainy, and everybody just like bought a 303. You know what I mean? Everybody had a fucking 303 and was just like, that's the machine that they made Mad Villainy on. And it's like, maybe they did some of the stuff. I don't know. Or maybe they didn't. I don't know. And people got really confused. Just like whatever you could find to figure out, you just went for it. So for me, the biggest thing was probably just trial and error and just making stuff over and over again. I did go to school for music, and that was like a good guidance, like a guideline for basic things like how to practice, how to rehearse bands, how to learn a tune, how to memorize songs, basic theory, and then also I did like the engineering thing. So like all the basics of engineering I learned there, even though I didn't really understand it, I was able to later apply it to everything, and now I use it every day. So those things also, that was a huge help. That was a lot of, a lot of the stuff that some of the stuff I learned was
Yeah,
not
yeah.
something you could just
So,
YouTube.
can you speak a little bit about what you've learned in school that maybe is applicable to like kind of people building themselves their own little kind of curriculum, if you will, for like kind of growing and producing for a lot of us who haven't and will never go to like a maybe a more formal style of training in music school?
So they don't teach you anything about how to be creative. It teaches you zero about that. If anything, it's maybe the opposite of whatever inspiring comes to that, because there's people telling you what you're doing is weird and wrong or whatever. You'll have like a composition professor, and he'll be like, why are you repeating this thing so many times? Why he doesn't call it a loop, he calls it an ostinato. You know what I mean? And it's just like, dude, like we're just not in the same world. Like you have no idea what I'm going for. And so that was actually kind of difficult. But the cool thing I did get out of it was like the formal training about like probably the thing I use the most is really just the most basic shit, which I probably could have learned in literally one or two classes. I didn't need to go to school for 4 years to do this. I learned a couple of these things in like two classes, and I just used the same thing over and over. But just like basic physics, like how frequencies work and how processing works with frequencies. Like for example, trying to compress a low frequency signal versus trying to compress a high frequency signal, and why is that different? Why does the compressor respond different to the low frequency versus the high frequency? Shit like that. Just like basic physics informs how I mix things, and helps a lot with that. So like little things like that. But now there's so many like tools for it. You can pick up that plus like 100 more crazy tips online now. Like you can like just sign up for like somebody's like like mixing some drop like crazy gems on you and shit. But um yeah, it's school is not, maybe the best part was that plus like just playing every day. Like they just forced me to learn a bunch of classical music that I wouldn't have learned anyway. Playing a bunch of jazz, playing instruments that are like challenging, like upright bass instead of just playing like regular electric. Like it was just cool. The challenges are cool. They keep you like kind of open. But yeah, learning about theory is tough because took me at least a year or two to unlearn all the
Mm.
different the way they teach it to you is so rigid. It takes you like a year or two to like let go
Yeah.
and just use it when it makes
So
sense.
I once heard you
You
say
know
like
what I
because I
mean?
think this is an encouraging thing too
Yeah.
is that you're getting better even if you don't feel like you are. So for somebody who is like grinding away day in day out and feels like maybe their beats they're just like they're not changing or they can't hear any differences. How important is just that consistency piece even when you feel like nothing's happening?
Yeah, yeah, it's not always about, I know there's that saying where it's like you're only as good as the last beat you made, and which is, it's funny in a lot of ways to me, that quote. But yeah, I don't think that's necessarily always true. You can totally be, you can make some trash, dude. There's like some of the most legendary producers will probably make the most trash beats sometimes. Like I promise you, they make garbage sometimes. I get stems from some people that I listened to growing up sometimes when I'm mixing it, and I'm like, what the like how did you put this together like this? You're crazier than me, and you've been doing it twice as long. And it's like shit like that. It's just like I promise you, everybody's making bullshit. They just don't show it. You only hear what people are ready to show you. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like that. It's like don't be so hard on yourself. It's okay to like make some bullshit. It's fun to see how far you can go. Like I used to do a thing where I would take the worst sounds I could find, like the stupidest drum sounds I could find, and that was what I would use. And I would be like, I'm gonna make the beat like this, and then I would make shit that I really liked, and I'm just like, it would just be weird. It's I don't know. It's just like there's so many fun, weird things you can do with it. Sometimes it's fun to sound like shit. I've made beats that are terrible on purpose because it's funny. Just so I can laugh at it. It's like it's just like just you just like have fun. You know what I
Yeah, I
mean?
mean,
I
I
think
think
that's the
that's
most
cool. I mean, I
important
feel like
thing,
kind of what you're
honestly.
speaking to a little bit there is, I mean, that's what's interesting is like to work really hard and to like kind of be really disciplined in a sense, but then also this really like this levity around like, it's I'm trying to have fun too.
Yeah. It sucks when it's not fun anymore. You know what I mean? That's the reason why I started making music. That's why I was drawn in the first place because I was like, what is this? This feels great. This is fun. It was fun to play. When I didn't know anything about the business side of it and this wasn't like my
Hmm.
main thing. Like it was fun. It was just fun. That's all. And I was glad to be at these shows at the time because I wanted to be able to play the show. If I made no money or dirty basement or some shit like that, you know what I mean? I was like, I was in there. You know what I mean? We're just all in there fucking with because we just love music.
Yeah, so I want to ask you a little bit
That's what it's
about
from.
like kind of the power of community as positive peer pressure in a sense. And if you can speak a little bit about that time being around when you got out to
Yeah.
LA and you were living with Ringo. And for everybody who doesn't know, that's Mind Design.
Where else are you getting a breakdown on mixing from Swarvy? Not only that, but he reminds us of the importance of love over productivity in making music. I spend the time making this show because I believe these conversations matter. Real knowledge openly shared for this community from producers on the path. Subscribe free at producerhead.substack.com. All weeks you get the loops, monthly you get the pocket, and there are written frameworks on the craft and business of production. Subscribers can also submit music for features as well as unreleased tracks for feedback. Producerhead.substack.com.
Mm. Um, right. Yeah, shout out my design. Him and his girlfriend at the time invited me to move to LA when I was like 23, 24. Um, I was working full time, like teaching after school, and just like just. And my brother helped encourage me too. My brother is amazing. Shout out him too because he is also a musician. He's like an amazing classical musician, and he's like 8 years older than me. So he kind of went through a lot of the shit of wanting to pursue music with his life before I did. And he went into it things and he was like studying music. He didn't really know what he was going to do exactly yet, but he was passionate about it. And then things didn't work out. He ended up switching and then going to like pharmacy. But I feel like because of that, he always tried to push me to just keep going. He's just like, just go for it. Don't like, just keep going. So he was just like, quit your job, move to LA, just go, fuck it. You know what I mean? Just quit. Like, what's the worst that can happen? So I was just like, all right. So I went there, and yeah, one of the coolest parts about being out there is just how many being around like-minded people is huge. Like some of the people I get as students, a big part of their struggles is that they have nobody to bounce their ideas off. There's nobody that listens to anything remotely close to what they're trying to make, and so they have no idea what they're just not understood. They don't feel seen in their communities, and so a lot of times they hit me up just to like sometimes just play me what they did and be like, what do you think? What can I do with this? Blah blah blah. They just need somebody to bounce something off of. So that's like huge as a creative person. So all your battles aren't in your own head. You get to bounce things off of. So the coolest part about living in LA, especially at that time, was just how like supercharged it was. Low End Theory was around at this time, and this is maybe the last however many years. I forget when they actually closed, but that was such a huge staple in the community that I feel like it just every week since it was going, it's just like radiating musicians in that area. Like it's crazy having a place that you want to perform is actually a really huge motivation. Like it's fun to like make where you could play it. What does sound like in this place? A place that you really want to play. So yeah, Lowen's huge, and then just living with Ringo, I can hear him making stuff on the other side of the wall all the time. So every day I'm hearing where he's at with it, and then where I'm at with it. It's just like, oh, it just pushed me to keep going. I was just like, man, going the fuck in over it. The beat I made maybe sounds like some dumb shit or whatever, or it was like corny, but I was just still grinding it out. I was just like, let me just keep going. I just kept making stuff. So yeah, like being around like-minded heads is huge. If for nothing else than the musical inspiration, but like in terms of just the emotional support you can get from a community, which is it's like so huge, man. This is
Yeah,
like
and
that's
I
how
know
you
right
move
now
forward through all your
you're
stuff.
not living in LA. So how does that feel different now?
with the physical separation, even though we have,
Yeah.
all of the kind of online stuff that we have, and you have all of the relationships that you have.
Well, over the pandemic, I started kind of prioritizing being closer to family. I pre-pandemic, I was, gigs were going pretty well. Like there was kind of a healthy I guess ecosystem of like, promoters and venues, especially for the type of music that all of us were doing. So I was playing gigs all the time. I would come back to New York to play usually 2, 3 times a year. So I could just come home for like a few weeks, hang out, whatever. I didn't like during the pandemic that when that shut down, every time I would FaceTime my
Mm.
family, my parents, they looked older. And I was like, I really don't like seeing them age quickly in front of me. I'd rather see them age slowly. And so that became more important to me. And so I was just came home and I didn't expect to stay in this house. I was gonna get another place, but I went on tour and I was like, "Can I leave my shit there? I'm gonna find a spot when I get back." And while I'm on tour, they're just like, "No, just stay. We'll re the studio." So me and my dad rebuilt out this studio in the basement. This was like an unfinished room and I put soundproofing in and shit. This is like the best workspace I've ever had. I get to see them every day, so it's sick. I love not having
That's
to
what's
get
up,
on a
man.
plane
Yeah.
to hug my mom. You know,
No, I mean,
so
it's
like
interesting. Yeah, like to
that's
your
like
point,
huge
it's
to
just
me.
like
Yeah.
those priorities shifting over time, and not like loving music and being able to kind of balance it with
Right.
everything else.
Hmm. Yeah. You know, the music stuff is extra
Mhm.
dope when you have people you love to share it with. You know what I mean? It's a little bit, and you can achieve everything you want, but if you're alone at the end, you're gonna
Yeah,
feel kind of
I've nothing to
empty.
add to that, man. Nothing to add to that. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah,
I guess in those periods,
right.
like, I'm curious about your attitude when it comes to like, because you hear somebody in the next room, or you like maybe you were in school, like, to your point, like you're by yourself and you kind of have a certain feeling about where you are musically, whether it's like playing production, whatever. And then you put yourself in school, or then you jump into LA where you're alongside Ringo and a bunch of other producers. Like, and you feel like, it sounds like there's a sense of like, oh, these people are kind of inspiring me to do more, or to like to grow in some way. And I'm wondering like what that voice is like, because I think some of us, like, there's a variety of ways you can react when you're presented with that kind of thing, right? Like basically like when you think you're one thing and then you experience something else, it makes you kind of reassess what you thought about what it is that you can do. And in really extreme cases, or in less stable cases, you can get to a place where you're like questioning deeper things about who you are, as opposed to just like what your like level of skill is, which is something that you can always work on, And so I'm wondering about like, it seems like you have a like a strong sense of clarity around that for yourself, and that you don't get confused, or it doesn't like affect your like kind of sense of self-worth. So I'm wondering if you have like kind of like, I don't know, if you can just speak about the way that maybe you think about that, or the way that you feel when you kind of come into contact with those kinds of situations.
I mean, that's. I think that's awesome. I think that's. I love having being able to look up to people. Too often I feel like we do that and we get disappointed and oh shit, like it's not what I thought it was. But being able to consistently look up to somebody and have someone that you can look up to is great. Consistent person in your life that can inspire you. And I'll say this too. I feel like validation is kind of underrated. you know, we talk about it in this way where it's like kind of a shallow thing, but honestly, getting validated for something that you thought nobody would give a fuck about is huge for helping you believe in yourself, building your confidence. Like having somebody you really respect show you respect as well. Like amazing musicians, like like confirming that what you're doing is good. That's actually it really helps give you like extra motivation. Be secure with yourself because it's like it's not really about the skill level, you know what I mean? There's so many people more skilled than other people or less skilled than people. And it's not really about the skills, even though those are nice things that you can utilize for whatever you need. It's more about like how you show up and how you choose to show up and express yourself.
I mean, I feel
Those
like
things are huge.
what I hear kind of is the sense of like how you are as a person and the way that you treat people, not just how skilled you are. And I think that's kind of connected to what I was asking earlier about like, how important, like
Mhm.
how good do you have to be to make good music, really, Exactly, right? Like exactly.
And
Like
good
so
and what do
in
you
the
mean by
music that you
good?
want to make,
How
it's like
good?
I think when I think about like, and it's not meant to be a knock on anybody, and really it's the opposite. It's like when I think about like a lot of music that I love and think about, I mean there is some that's maybe more technical, but a lot of it in terms of like it's like music, like its complexity from like a music theory standpoint or anything like that, it's not something that's like out of this world, right? And so I think
Mhm.
it kind of comes back to the thing we were talking about earlier. It's like you
Right,
can
right,
get
right.
lost in practicing and all of this stuff, and these are things that really have no end. You know what I mean? There is no, you don't get to the end of practicing. And so,
Yeah.
and yeah, and so it
No,
is like, I know
yeah.
that in my own way, that feeling you described earlier about just like kind of like just getting lost in this vortex, sort of like I'm just gonna keep doing this for like, some kind of like endless period of time. But it's like, I don't know, I think it is like thinking about how to prioritize, like if you want to be somebody who makes music that people listen to on some level, like figuring out the right way to like balance your time and your energy so that you're actually making and putting out music. Because in a way, what I found for myself is, and I think practicing can be a way to avoid that, because it is this thing where there is no output, and that you can just like, well, you can, yeah, and you're like, well, no, but I'm doing this to quote unquote get better, and that's worthwhile because like that's musicianship and that's knowledge, etc. Right? But you're like, but I'm not. It's also a way to hide and not connect with people and make music and share music. So it's an interesting. So I wonder if you've experienced that at all in some way, because that's recently something I've been like kind of like watching myself in this kind of loop.
Man, just make the shit, dude. I actually never really had that experience, but I see it a lot where I know I've met so many amazing musicians could play anything I asked them to play, but could not make one song for themselves. They wouldn't have any idea where to start. These are different skills, so it depends on what you work on, what you feel like working on. If putting something out is important to you and you want to share, then maybe you should try to like figure out how to get stuff out. But maybe you do just want to practice too, and I feel like if you want to just like keep working on your shit, that's also cool too. It's just it's cool to not get lost, and like you said, like using it as sort of like a way to hide. You should, I feel like it should be what it is. If you're gonna practice all the time, you know that's fine, but that's just know what you're doing, you know what I mean, and that's what you're trying to do. And if you're gonna make beats all the time, just know that's what you're doing too. By the time you need to make a show or play a show, maybe you're not, maybe you're rusty as fuck at what you need to play. So it can work both ways, you know what I mean. I have to really brush up when I need to perform, because I'm practicing like I used to, in terms of just like having a bass in my literally the entire fucking day. So it's just like it's hard to readjust when like I'm used to just like throwing the whole thing at myself, and I'm trying to be like, okay, let me pick a time that's good to practice. So a lot of times my practice overlaps with things that I'm making. I'll have an idea and then I'll be like, oh, let me try to play it. And then I can't even play my own idea because some weird thing I sang in my head or whatever. And then I have to sit there and figure it out and practice it. And then I record it and like do it. And so it's like all one. Kind of when I'm in my best like state for trying to get everything done, I'm just making stuff. That's it. And that is practice. Like if I'm doing that every day, I'm playing every instrument every day.
So what do you think that you understand about finishing records that most of us miss?
Did we talk about that last time? I'm trying to remember.
I brought it up when we talked last time because of the sense of like, there's just, you have a individual productivity and then like really vast productivity, like you mentioned, with other people. And I think it's clear that people look to you as somebody that can help them like make their thing real, like, like Rare Pleasure being an example, right? And so I think there is something, I think that's one of those like things, and from the outside, like that seems to make you really special, is that you can make an idea like tangible for yourself and for other people. And so I'm curious about, to what extent, if you were to like kind of think about that, like and maybe if you can't see it, what do you think it is that other people see in you that they tap you for that?
I feel like I do a pretty good job of seeing the whole record, the big picture of a whole record. I can see the whole record fairly quickly after listening to it however many times. And especially if I have like a relationship like where I'm talking to this artist and figuring things out, I can get a feel of what they're trying to do and where they're going for. And I think sometimes the reason why people hit me up to mix certain records over other people, I get this a lot where people are like, I hit up 2, 3 other mixing engineers that I thought would do a good job, and they're not getting the vibe right. It's for some reason something's wrong. And then I try my first mix and they're like, this is exactly what I was going for. And it's just like, it's kind of like how Bob Power, you know how when he was like mixing, like he mixed Baduism like a Tribe record. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these things kind of overlap, and the things that we like about different records can be, applied to something. You know what I mean? So like all different genres of records have value and how they get from the beginning to the end, and how they push a listener to do that. Mixing an R&B record like a rap record goes a long way. It's like they're kind of part of the same world, you know what I mean? And so I don't really like split up genres too much like that. I don't try to stick to any kind of formula. I kind of try to stick to what feels good for the speakers. You know what I mean? I want the speakers to show the person that's listening what the idea is as clearly as possible. And so I think people hit me up to do that because I can sequence records pretty well. Sometimes people I know a bunch of artists that they're great at everything they do, but they admittedly don't know how to put their record in order. They don't know what order their songs. So sometimes I do stuff like that, or at least get that started so that they can tweak it from there. You know what I mean? Give them a template for like you could try this and stuff like that. And that's just loving listening to full albums, which I'm told is a dying art. uh, sitting and listening to an album from start to finish is low key like niche, you know. But that's one of my favorite things that that's one of my favorite things. So I still believe in. I think that's maybe that's part of why people hit me up. I don't know. I feel like I just mix it. I was just popping. I just think about how it should feel in the room with people, and I put a lot of care into the records. You know.
So, yeah, a few things I want to follow up on within this. I think one is, how do you know when something is done?
When I don't hear anything else that is sticking out to me that is like awkward. If that makes sense. Maybe that's the best way I could put it. When I can listen to it from the beginning to the end and I'm just like, yeah, that's supposed to feel. Nothing threw me off of that path that it sets you. It's the first track starts you on a path. If you can get from that to the end of that song, good. And if you can get from that to the last song, the end of the last song, then there's nothing to fix. You know what I mean? Like it's like a movie. It just like pushes me from into the end, and I didn't question how I got there, like in a way that's I'm like that's not, you know what I mean?
How many sets of speakers are you listening to things on while you're working?
I have two main stereo monitor pairs, and I do have two mono ones, but I only have one of them. So I have like an Aventone that I use sometimes for referencing. That's I really only use that when I'm having a lot of trouble. I can't tell. Well, if I feel like I can't trust my ears in the middle of a mix, I turn that thing on, and that thing helps me. It just makes it like what's going on, especially in my mid range. So I kind of toggle between this two. I got the Yamaha like HS or did they are they HS? Whatever the 5 series is, right? With the sub. And then I have that tuned exactly how I like it. I have this all in the center of my room with nothing. I have like a lot of space behind it. So that's like the best. The biggest thing with this is like knowing how your room sounds. In this case, the least, if you have it kind of in the center of the room and a lot of space behind, kind of like angled perfectly, there's not going to be that much interference from the room. Um, and then I have the Rockets, which kind of just give me like a very smooth mid-range clarity where that I can hear. The Yamahas are a little bit scooped in the mid-range, so I skip back and forth between those. After I do as much as I can on those, then I check on headphones. Usually, I'll like just chill. I'll just take a break, maybe smoke and listen, see how it sounds on there. Just it doesn't even have to be studio headphones. It could be just regular listening on anything. Just listen and just like chill out. And then yeah, that's why I can really only work on records that I like because I'm gonna be listening to it a lot. So like I have to be like, oh, this is dope. Like I have to want to hear. Like I'll have a vision of how I want it to feel, and then I just keep going till I get.
Are the Rockets fives or eights?
I got the fives.
When when you sit down to mix, are you working with a reference track, or is it just the thing that you hear in your head and you kind of know when you arrive?
Sometime like for other people's shit, sometimes they have a reference that they want me to kind of follow. Some people are a little more strict about it than others. Some people really want for some reason the my mix to sound like somebody else's mix. And then that can be difficult. But for the most part, people just trust me to do my thing. Or sometimes the reference is just for timing. And
When you say timing, you mean like kind of pacing of the track?
yeah, like for example, I get stems from like all different wacky ass ways. And like for example, I'm mixing a record right now where the producer sent me all his beats and he didn't sequence them anything at all like what he gave the rapper. So I have the source material and I have sort of the mix of what he had and I have to match it to exactly what the rapper says.
The
And
reference
then his
from the
stems that
actual
he sent me.
artist is what you mean. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so like what their demos basically, their demos. And so I have like the beat and then he sends me the acapellas and the acapellas are not lined up exactly the way, like there's like milliseconds difference of like timing for between the two instrumentals that they used, shit like that. You know what I mean? It's just like random things
Wow,
aren't
you
actually
actually have to
mixing, but
assemble the
but it
track
is. I'm
again.
like, I'm
Yeah,
putting it
no.
together. Yeah.
So, and then I also what I meant to ask was also, do you use like when you like when somebody tells you they want a certain thing, are you pulling in some kind of reference track externally alongside to mix to, or are you just
I used to do that more, but I don't really do that anymore. I do that more maybe for mastering to get an idea for loudness. But for mixing, no, I don't do that anymore. I kind of just like the arsenal. I don't really like trying to make my mix sound like somebody else's mix too much. I kind of just want to do like once I hear what's there, it's kind of like carving it out. You know what I mean? It's like I can only work with what I have, and I can create things based on what's there around it, but I can only go so far. So like I kind of see it for what it is, and I'm like in my head I automatically think this is the best way that I can put this together, and I just
conceptually or philosophically, do you want to can you talk a little bit about just the way that you approach mixing and think about mixing, like from start to finish, in terms of, because I think it is one of those like, because I want to, what I want to avoid is like being super like procedural or technical, because it's like everything's going to be different based on what you're working with and what you're trying to do. But I do think given the different types of projects you've worked on, like it'd be cool for you to give a little bit of those gems to people, because I think it's one of those, I don't know, it's like a black box kind of thing, you know?
there's definitely universal steps that regardless of the genre or the artist, I'm usually doing this in a certain order, and I don't use any templates or save like chains or whatever, but I use a very similar chain until I figure out a better way. So like I'm usually kind of tackling it like this, but so you're talking about for
We
mixing
could do both, but let's start with
specifically,
mixing, I
or
guess. Yeah.
mastering? Yeah, so mixing. Okay, so okay, so they give me the stems. Let's say all the stems are all in one. So we have one folder, we got the instrumental. Let's say it's all tracked out, and then we have all the vocals and they're all tracked out. First thing I do is if they're not labeled clearly, and even if they are labeled clearly, I have to organize everything. The first step I do is organize. I label all the tracks. I try to put them, I usually put them in almost the same order every time, depending on the song, but almost I have like a drums on the top, and then I group those. Groups are like super crucial for getting all this shit done. Group those, and then I have whatever, usually like the bass, because I try to mix bass and drums together. Um, and I'll go, and I really just go step by step. I literally go one piece at a time. Like if the drums are split up and it's like just a kicks first, and I just mess with the kick. And I'm thinking of the whole song too. I'm not just soloing the kick just to solo it and be like, let's get a cool kick sound. I'm thinking of how the kick fits into the song, and that means tuning. That means EQ. Is it like too muddy on super low end? I just get the cleanest thing in my head that I think I can get for that kick as close as I can get it. And then I go, okay, what's the snare sound? And then I do the snare. And then it's kick and snare. Then I put them together. And then I do the next thing. So the hi-hat. You know what I mean? Get a hi-hat sound that I think will work, blend it in. So solo blend. You literally do that sometimes 50 plus times, depending on how many stems there are. It might take a while to actually go through the whole thing. So I do that one step at a time, and then I have a whole drum sound before I know it, and then I group that, and then I make the whole drums sound. I try to get everything as good as I can without crazy processing. You know what I mean? I try to not do this group processing until I'm done with the individual pieces. So I try to get the best sound I can for each individual piece. Then I group it. Then I, like, for example, I try not to do too much group processing, but for drums, I want the drums to sound like one thing. So I'll put like one processor, maybe the drum bus, or maybe it's like a parallel compression or whatever. Get that, mix that with the bass. Next thing, just keep doing that. Solo blend, solo blend, solo blend. And this is all instrumental. You know, I'm just doing the instrumental. I get the instrumental sounding as good as I can. And then I mute that. And then I go to the voice and I do the same thing. I do one at a time. I get the best, I work with the main vocal. I try to pick the most important one first. I try to work from what I call this, like the center of a mix outwards. That's why I start with drums, because a lot of times the stuff I'm working on drums are pretty like focused in the center. Because I do a lot of rap stuff, a lot of R&B stuff, So for a song with drums like that, that makes the most sense, And then I try to have the drums and the vocals kind of like matching, because of like the two loudest things usually in a track like that. Play those together, and I just keep doing it. So solo and blend, solo and blend. It's really just the hardest part is probably organizing it sometimes, where I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Like sometimes people record things really weird, where they'll like record one verse on one track, half of a verse on another track, and the other half on another one. They might have ad libs on the same track that they had a main. You know what I mean? So I'm processing for the main, and by the time I get to the ad lib, it's not the right processing. So organizing also means chopping up the audio and putting it where I need it to go. So I might need to cut, this section of what they called the main verse, but it's not actually, and then put it here. So I have to like make sense of everything, organize it, and yeah, and then just work like that. So like really that's the hardest part, organizing everything and then staying focused as you're just doing, keep the whole big picture in mind as you solo, and
And
solo blend, solo blend, solo blend,
do you
solo
spend
blend.
time gain staging at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So um I try not to focus too much on that, but that can get really weird and messy fast with mixing. Well, it can get messy fast with my own music. I've really like I'm so lax. I let so many mistakes slide and so many weird things with my own music, but when I'm working on other people's shit, yeah, I'm more careful with the gain staging. I might work on the drum sound and make sure it's not clipping, but it's still maybe too loud. Let's say it's at -2 and I need it at -4, -6. I'll just mix the drums and then I'll figure out a way to get it down. So like that's the other thing. So like I'll group the whole instrumental together. Sometimes if there's no returns that I'm using and it's all within one group, I can just take the group volume and bring it down a couple decibels or whatever. And that's my gain staging. And then I have space to mix the vocals on top, stuff like that.
Gotcha. That's cool. So, but you're thinking about it more in an aggregate sense and not. It sounds like in a more aggregate way and not like obsessing over is this kick like before you process it or before you start to mix it. Are you gain staging just these raw sounds?
Oh, well, hopefully they did all that, and they have decent gain staging, but sometimes not. And sometimes my shit is like really loud. Sometimes people send me stems that are like really maxed out, or their mix is maxed out, or whatever. Yeah, but sometimes not. I think most people know to leave a little bit of headroom. But even if it is, you can get it to work as long as there's no even you can even get it to work even just clipping. But yeah, it's like yeah, sometimes it adds in artificial noise that's not actually there when you do shit like that, and that can get tricky.
Hmm. And then you want to talk about mastering a little bit?
Sure. I try to keep mastering pretty transparent. Really depends on what I'm getting. And then loudness is something everybody kind of has a different preference for. I personally don't give a shit if my own record is too loud, or if it's not loud enough, I should say. Um, but some people want their shit like really loud, and so you kind of have to make all these weird compromises with the way the audio sounds. But otherwise, I try to be pretty transparent, but some people actually want me to master their stuff where I do a bunch of weird stuff to it. So I don't know. It's like mastering. I don't know. It's a funny thing, but I generally just have uh I put everything out on a sequence. Every song has its own track, and I just have a processing. I'm kind of just going through each one. There's an EQ stage, maybe a slight saturation stage, and then usually like limiting it. That it's really just compression and EQ. I try not to do like anything crazy. I like to keep people's stuff as close to the spirit of what they had as I can, unless they ask me to do otherwise.
Oh, here's like this is when how do you recognize when you have a good idea that's like worth finishing?
Mm. I mean, that's tricky because you can low key convince yourself that it's not a good idea and then not do it. And then you won't do it. I don't know. You ever see that quote of David Lynch talking about ideas where he's just like, if you miss out on your own idea and you let it go by without grabbing it, you'll want to kill yourself. And he says that there's multiple times where he's interviewed and he just uses the same phrasing where he keeps talking about wanting to kill yourself if you miss your own ideas. I'm trying to be more like that. I used to be really, really, really obsessive like that, where that was the most important thing that was happening. I'm a little bit more lax about it, where sometimes I let things go. Sometimes I try to trust that the idea will come back, but it doesn't always. So really, how do you know it's good? I don't know. It just feels good. I might hear something in my head and be like, "Damn, that's kind of tight. Maybe that'll be cool." And then maybe I try it, and it sounds like ass, or maybe really you don't know. I don't know. You can't judge your thing until after you do it. So maybe the best approach is to just try to execute all of your ideas as much as you can. You know what I mean? You don't know if it's going to be good until you make it. I've had ideas that I thought would be fire, and then I make it and I hate it. And then I've had ideas that I was iffy about, and then I try it and then I love it. So my opinion of it is kind of irrelevant.
Yeah. How do you so when we were talking before, you mentioned this idea about like kind of one of the hurdles as an artist is like the calibration of your filter, right? Because you can either be like overly restrictive or overly lax with it. And so how do you think about kind of, essentially that taste or that calibration of that filter to assess that?
Like when you're making stuff and like how do you know like how to edit your own ideas? I don't know. I feel like you kind of need experience chopping your shit up. You need experience destroying things. Like as much as you should be experienced creating things, you should also I feel like I destroy more than half of what like more than like maybe double what I create, you know? Um Part of the process is really actually it's destructive as well. Like I take things apart, I reflip it, and I just try to pay attention to how I feel as I go. And that might change. I might be like, I don't know if this is cool. And I come back and be like, I don't remember how to type. And then I have a fresh perspective. So I don't know. I think trying to come at it with the uh, I think a good rule of thumb maybe is to try to come at it with the perspective of less is more. And then you'll realize what you want to keep and what you don't want to. And limiting your I got kind of like I started making music on like my DS and you only have like 3 tracks on there. You get 2 monophonic synths and then 4 drum oscillators that you can use whatever you want. You don't even have to use them for drums, but you can use them for drums. Um, and just having no having that many restrictions, you know, it changes how you make things. You know, it makes you really appreciate having a lot of options. I think stripping your options away and making things simpler is a good place to start to try to figure out what kind of things you like to keep and what you're gonna also when you take something out and then you miss it, you know what I mean? Like pay attention to how you feel. Like you might be like, damn, I missed that was there. Now you know it was worth someone to put it back. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't know, it's just a constant interaction with your stuff of creating and destroying and then paying attention to how it makes you feel.
And are you like when you say destroying, it sounds is it kind of like like a writing is a rewriting kind of thing, like an editing process?
It could be that. It could just be trying something and then just never and then just like trashing. It could just be but yeah, generally it's like completely changing my idea. Like I try to not trash an idea completely until I've tried to flip it at least a few times. You know what I mean? I'll try to be like, man, there was something there that had me interested. Maybe I can salvage that and just put it in a different light, you know, and I just keep trying to flip something and flip it over and over and over and over. And then if I didn't done that and I'm just like, all right, I think it's whatever. And then I just, I trash it. you know?
But that's cool. I find it interesting that it's not like if you hit a wall, you don't just give up or like assume that there's nothing there. You do seem to like examine possibility. So what I'm curious about is like, are there kind of mechanical things? Because you're an Ableton guy, right? So like, are there like mechanical or like kind of like physical like processes that you'll kind of just default to just to try to like get that possibility stuff turning?
It's different all the time. It's kind of like I go into like an action painting mode where I just stop. I just like kind of blank out my mind and just start trying stuff. Try to do things. I don't know. It could be all types of things. It could be actually chopping it up. It could be repitching it. It could be changing the speed. It could be changing the order of the chords. Maybe you reverse everything and you hear something else. Maybe it's taking out half the things that you recorded and only keeping 2 of the elements. You know what I mean? I actually do that a lot where I'll record a whole thing and then I take out like half of it and that's what I want, or more than that. I'll be like, I actually like these 2 tracks, and I think they shines the most like this. And and I'm not so attached to all the other things that I recorded that they have to be used. It's just like it's okay to just like try things and then just fuck destroy it and then keep it and then or salvage it or whatever. All that whole thing is part of the process, like just like picking it apart and putting it back together.
Yeah, right on. So I got some of these like kind of shorter form questions I want to ask you. I guess before we do that, there's just two more things I want to ask you before we drop into that. One is like I guess like we kind of talked a little bit about like kind of like rear view mirror stuff. And I guess like do you think about like how would you describe where you feel like you are now in terms of I don't know if you want to call it your career or just the point in your life and like what do you feel like you figured out and what do you feel like is interesting to you and what are you trying to figure out, going forward in the next however long?
I'm interested in how my practices with myself affect how I approach like how I approach myself and like I've been trying to practice some more mindful breathing exercises, things like that. Things that I've found use in over the years but would fall off on, and then trying to actually see what it would feel like if I just tried to be more disciplined about it. So like breathing deeply every day and how that affects how I feel throughout the day and how that affects what I might feel like doing or how I talk to somebody or how I talk to myself. Things like that is like kind of where the things I'm really interested in. I'm really interested in I always get really interested in the thing I'm not doing. So if I go really hard, let's say I make a whole album like I did with Nina, like playing a lot of stuff and there's no samples. The next record, I'm gonna have this pent up energy where I need to use samples. So I'm using samples on that entire record, and I didn't play anything. I programmed everything. You know what I mean? Like I penciled everything. So like just trying to I'm constantly going for like the opposite. I'll do one thing and eventually there's like a balance and stuff. Yeah, I just been having fun with random trying to like have fun, stay having fun. Like I said, I was making stuff on the DS and it was just fun, like just little things like that. Just playing bass for 2 hours or whatever. I'm at a pretty decently balanced maybe not with my time as much, but with my energy and attitude for everything. I feel like I'm like happy to show up to do my production, happy to show up for a show that I have to do, happy to show up and engineer, which over the years I could have had mixed feelings about for whatever reason, but I'm feeling like really present with all that stuff.
Really cool, man. Are there any projects, either upcoming or past, that you want to point some people to that are maybe just discovering you?
Sure, I have like the record I just talked about with Nappy Nina, Nothing Is My Favorite Thing. I'm really happy with that one. If you haven't listened to Rare Pleasure, that's one of my favorite records I ever worked on. That's Mind Design Rare Pleasure. And then yeah, I have a record a lot of people missed where I was kind of singing, and you don't have to listen to it.
What's that one called?
But I do like that one a lot. It's called Sunny Days
Are
Blue.
you planning to do any more stuff when you're singing?
I do. I just have not been able to. I have some songs that I already have recorded and stuff like that, but I don't know how to put that stuff. It hasn't become clear to me how to put everything together yet.
Cool, man.
It's really slow.
Yeah, and on social
For like
media,
an actual album. Yeah.
your handle?
Oh, Swarvy, Swarvy on I think everything on Instagram, Warvy, Waarvy on Twitch. And what is
Are
it
you
on?
streaming on
Don't
Twitch
go on Twitter
these days?
That's it.
Oh, I didn't realize that. What are you
Look up
doing on Twitch
Swarvy.
when you stream?
Sometimes, yeah. The last however many streams I did, I was just playing video games. But sometimes I'll like cook up on there or like mix if the artist is cool with me.
Right on.
Or just hanging out random.
Yeah, actually, this just made me think about, like, you're not the most active person on social media, and I wanted to just get your take on that, because it's like you've been able to carve out your lane and do your thing, and I think that's important to call out, just because of what is like a relentless presence of all of that, and this kind of sense of like you can't do anything in music if you don't make that a priority in your life. So I guess you must, yeah. No, but I mean, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say I respect the fact that you've been able to do what you've done, period. But then when you layer on the fact that, you're not somebody who is content obsessive, it's even really more incredible in my opinion. And I think it's worth calling out and noting. So I just want to say if you had any thoughts or wanted to speak on that at all.
Thanks, man. I have a really hard time getting myself to go into like a content mode, and I don't really like. I could do that. I could just post myself making a beat every day or playing bass or whatever every day, and sometimes that's fun. To just do a quick little thing. I don't know. I can't. Out of all the things I do, adding content creation into the mix is not something that seems like fun for me. Like it just feels like I get anxiety even thinking about just having to make that a priority. I'm just like not only do I have to do all this shit, I have to set up the camera, gotta do all this stuff. That's cool, but like I don't know. I grew up when you didn't have to do that shit. Musicians were musicians. People cared about music. People cared about listening to full records. That may or may not be the case now. Don't really give a shit. I mean, I'm just like, people hit me up. The right amount of people need to hit me up, know who I am. It's like, I don't know if it'll necessarily make me happier to be more accessible and more, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what's up.
I like being low key,
Yeah, no, I wasn't even
That's
thinking
kinda
about that,
the
but
whole
given
shit,
what we were
yeah.
talking about, it felt right. So I appreciate your thoughts on that. So what's your most used piece of hardware right now?
Does my computer not count? You mean other than my computer?
You can answer the question however it feels right to you.
This is my PC. I use the fuck out of my computers so hard. I run them into the ground.
Best free plugin or tool that you'd recommend to everybody?
Oh man, the Rough Rider compressor is amazingly free. Rough Rider 1. Make sure you get the Rough Rider 1. Dude, it low key is still useful. It's not like everything, but it's pretty useful. Especially, I like it a lot for parallel compression. That's like my go-to parallel compression return.
Damn, you heard it here. Is there a production technique that you overuse?
Someone emailed me drunk one time years ago and said I used the Rhodes too much. And I was like, okay, sure. So maybe that.
They send you. Did they say in the email that they were drunk?
They told me the next day. They apologized the next day and said they were drunk. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh wow!
I
Shout
know,
out
it's
to
a
them. We
stranger,
have
I
that
don't know who
story
they are.
now, so thank you. Something in your studio you've been meaning to organize or fix for months.
Dude, I just did this and it's been years. I just finally got an XLR snake. You know, I've been my cable management is really, really kind of embarrassing almost, but it's crazy. And I have a lot of stuff. So it's like I have like 3 computers on pretty much all the doing shit. And so it's just like multiple interfaces, all the speakers, capture cards. But the main thing was my drum mics. My drum mics behind me are like behind me, and they were going all the way across the room, and it was annoying me so much. And it was just one of those things I kept procrastinating on. Why don't I just buy this? I just bought it finally, and that's awesome. So yeah, snake. I need more snakes.
3 artists that changed how you think about music.
Let's okay. Knowledge. Wow. Teebs actually, and I'm naming all modern producers because I'm thinking of 3 very impactful times in the last 20 years that I was like, the fuck is and then I'm gonna say James Yancey.
Who's an underrated producer you think more people should know about?
Like producer. There's this dude. Have you heard of Rue Jacobs? He's very low key. RUE. His handle's RUE.Jacob. JACOBS. Super low key, but he makes stuff that sounds like Piero Piccioni. It's like library music. And he just plays all the instruments. And I don't know if he's really put out a lot of records like that, but
check it out.
all the stuff that he posts is beautiful.
Jacobs.
So, yeah, shout out.
Last book that actually stuck with you.
I don't know. I don't know. What's the last book that stuck with you?
That's a good question. I mean, that's all relative, I guess. I try to be reading something generally at some point, but I'm trying to think the last. I mean, my cousin gave me this book not too long ago called Martyr. That was pretty wild. Kind of like it's
like fiction?
Yeah, just a wild, like, if somebody's looking for a piece of fiction, I couldn't recommend enough. A pretty interesting story, immigrant family, kind of interesting, just like a story told from multiple perspectives across family generations. You know, and it's a really cool, heartfelt kind of thing. Makes you definitely stuck with me for sure.
That's dope. I feel like the last book I can remember reading is like the jazz piano book. It's not like I just haven't been reading enough like stuff. I watch a ton of movies and stuff like I haven't been picking up books like that.
Is there a movie that you would recommend?
Like new or just any movie?
Any movie, maybe something you think people need to see.
I'm gonna probably want to change my answer later, but this movie was just crazy. It's crazy head fuck. It's called Cure. It's a Japanese film from the 90s. There's probably a better film that people actually need to see, but this one's just like really. I mean, if you love films, it's just a crazy movie. It makes you feel so strange.
Best piece of unsolicited advice you've ever ignored and shouldn't have.
This is crazy trying to think of advice that I've ignored. Slowing down. You know, I probably had a bunch of people tell me to chill out and slow down and stop doing so much stuff, or being involved with the wrong people, and I
Mm,
and then figured it out for myself
there you
later.
go. No, that feels real, man. And then
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to ask that I'm going to add because of what we were talking about is like, do you have a gold standard or maybe a few albums in terms of when you think of sequencing? Because I think it's a really interesting kind of nuance that we were talking about earlier.
That's true. Okay. I'm trying to think of some of the crazy. All I can think of are albums I just really like. The sequencing is not oh, The Roots. Things Fall Apart. Sequenced crazy. So crazy. I don't know why they went so hard, but that is like that's such a crazy achievement of like record making in rap and hip hop shit. Like that is just a crazy sounding record. It still sounds really good to this day. Like that's
Yeah,
just
it's a
insane.
great album. I'm gonna like listen to that with thinking about the sequencing specifically. I haven't listened to it in a while.
Dude, they went crazy.
Yeah.
It's so
I mean,
good.
given
It's
how
so good.
like obsessive and like admittedly like self-diagnosed like neurotic Amir is, like it doesn't surprise me that you would choose a Roots record, really.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense.
so that's probably a great call. And if you could change one thing about the internet, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Take the AI out. At this point, like in 2026, I guess take the AI out, stop censoring everything that's real, and stop shadow banning people that say free Palestine.
Wow. Well, that's a great place to end it, man. I really is there anything else that you want to say to the people before we get out of here?
No, that was great. That was cool. Thank you so much for having me, bro.
Man, no, kidding, man. Like, thank you so much for making the time to do this. I really appreciate
Of course.
it.
Yeah,
Learned a
appreciate you,
ton,
man.
and there's so much game in this for everybody. That concludes another episode of Producer Head. This has been Toru, and in a way, so are you. Big thanks to Swarvy for being here. We will catch you next time. Peace. That'll do it for my conversation with Swarvy. I know for me, I'm left with that reminder about how important it is to stay connected to why you make music in the first place, and to make sure that you set it up and do it in a way that you enjoy making music. It's easy to get caught up and obsessed with deadlines, output, productivity, etc. And if you just enjoy doing it, you will keep doing it. And if you keep doing it, things will continue to happen. So thank you again to Swarvy for coming on the show, reminding us of this important and helpful idea. And we will catch you in the next one. Share this episode with a producer that you care about. Subscribe at producerhead.substack.com. This has been Toru, and in a way, so are you. Peace.